like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe.
Let's listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I am your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. And you know what's interesting? It doesn't matter how much we cover and go over things in this case, people out there, a lot of them are still absolutely clueless on just basic facts of this case. So it's very difficult to go through intricate details on a specific subject, which happens to be the only thing that separates the guilters of the world from the non-guilters, which is the DNA evidence in this case. People don't even understand the actual process of things that are even alleged to have gone on in this case. It's amazing to me. And it's not just people, it's actual people that are speaking about this case to other people like they have, the knowledge and authority to do so. And I'm all about free speech, but it's a job in itself, just correcting the misguided efforts of some people out there that probably have good intentions. Some don't. I mean, I've uncovered, Special Agent Imel, who's on here pretending like he's, just a random citizen searching for truth and justice. I mean, it's no doubt that's get a clue. Murphy's dog, or whatever he calls himself these days, Streak. I mean, give me a break. It's not hard to figure it out. He's obsessed over the 1112 camera, and he's obsessed over yours truly. But not only that, if you think about it, nobody in the entire world had the Linda Lane camera footage, all the original footage. That was turned over to police immediately. I don't believe for a second that the Queen Road Apartments guy kept a copy for himself and disseminated it on the internet. No, that was leaked on the internet by an investigator in the case. And who had the original copies all that time? The same gentleman I'm talking about. And when he goes out and he tries to spin his yarns and act like he's for Kohberger's innocence and speaking like he's for Kohberger's innocence, but then the whole time manipulating people's minds to go the other direction, I know what his game is. So, yeah, we know who you are, guy. But, see, it's people like him out there doing his thing that contributes to the mindset of other morons. I had a commenter, I know, I'm not getting into a fight with other content creators. This is just something that I've got to point out because it's very important, because they can confuse people. They can even confuse people that follow me regularly. But like this one other guy, the commenter told me to go listen to him. He said he was talking bad about me, which that's cool. I kind of like listening to him talk bad about me. But then as I started listening to this moron, I didn't even get to the part where he talked bad about me. He was talking like he had a lot of knowledge in the case. And then when it got to the DNA, he didn't even understand even the basic facts of the case. So as Sergeant, I call him Sergeant Farina, right? Because he sounds just like Dennis Farina, the actor.
About the sun, does it ever shine in this town, or is there smog around?
Anyway, as I was listening to this guy give his ridiculous insight into things, mentioning the fact that he was motivated by Special Agent Imel over there, then he gets into a discussion. He has somebody call into his little talk he's having, and they start to have a discussion about the DNA in the case. And I mean, doesn't even know the difference between the STR profile and the SNP profile. I mean, it has the whole process of everything that's even being discussed, even put forth by the state, confused. And I'm like, good grief, man. And that's not that hard to figure out, is the basics of the case. But if somebody like that is confused and confusing people. There's no telling how many people out there that are really confused. So I'm going to have to continue to help people understand this aspect of the case. And I went through the court record, found the motion to compel by the defense that actually has the attachments of all of the Department of Justice procedures as it relates to the IGG, and it had the article from the institute that the Idaho State Police lab director and the Idaho DOJ person contributed to, and 13 other federal and state agencies and their departments that contributed to it. And I've put together quite a bit of information for you in this video, and I'm going to try to make it as easy to understand as possible. So for those of you that do understand, it'll just reinforce what we've discussed. For those of you that kind of understand, it's going to help you understand more. And for those of you that don't understand or have been misinformed, it's going to help you start to get on the path to getting that understanding. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. We're going to clearly understand the facts of this case, first of all, and then we're going to understand where everything went wrong in this case. Okay, the first thing we got to cover is the basic facts of the case so that we're all on the same page as to actually what, excuse me, actually what the, what the facts are on the case. Okay, so this is the facts of the case on this left side over here, as stated by law enforcement, the prosecution. This is the understanding of the facts of the case presented by them. On November 13th, the atrocity, they collected a knife sheath. On November 20th, they created an STR profile from the DNA from the knife sheath, and they uploaded it into the CODIS database, and they did not find a match. This is according to law enforcement. Then, on November 29th, 2022, according to the court record, the sample of DNA was sent to Othram Labs for them to start an IGG investigation. And according to the court record, Othram Labs created an SNIP profile, and they started to conduct a genetic genealogy family tree investigation, and they did not come up with any answers. Then at some point in time, not known to apparently anybody, the FBI removed that sample from Othram Labs, and then on December 19th, they magically came back with a lead. They said that Bryan Kohberger was named as a lead from the IGG, and then they disseminated that to law enforcement. This is what the facts of the record show. Then on December the 28th, the trash that was pulled from Kohberger's house on December 27th had Bryan Kohberger's father's DNA in the trash, and they created a profile of some type, and then they matched it to the original STR sample that the Idaho State Lab created on November 20th, and they could not exclude Bryan Kohberger as being the son of the person whose DNA they found in the trash. And then on December 29th, based on that, they got an arrest warrant. And then on January 5th, really on December 29th in Pennsylvania, January 5th in Idaho, they got buccal swabs from Bryan Kohberger's mouth swab. They created an STR sample from the buccal swab, and then, according to them, they matched it to the original STR profile they created on November 20th, and it was a 5.067 octillion match. So that is the facts based on the court record and what the prosecution, the state, is alleging. Now, when you look at the DOJ guidelines for use of IGG in active criminal investigations, the process that they alleged that they went through over here follows the exact guidelines that the DOJ sets forth for the use of IgG in a case like this. The STR profile must be first submitted to CODIS and no matches found before they can start an IgG investigation according to the DOJ guidelines. According to the state, they did that on November 20th. Then IgG may then be performed by a contracted company to create an SNP profile and conduct an IgG investigation. Well, they say they did that when they sent it to Othram Labs on November 29th, so they're following the DOJ guidelines. Then if a lead is produced, a reference sample must be collected from the subject and a direct comparison to the original STR profile must be made. So that's what they've done with the father's DNA on December 28th. Once they matched that DNA to the original STR profile, according to the state, they followed the guidelines and procedures. The IgG portion of this is totally separate from the STR here and here and here. This was just designed to generate a lead. So if they did all of this just exactly the way they said they did, then they followed the DOJ guidelines and there wouldn't be any issues in this case. That is the facts of the record in this case. When people start talking about the IgG and then they confuse it for the STR original sample, then they get all kinds of messed up. These are two separate processes. Take these three boxes right here. Let's see. We can take these three boxes and pull them over so they don't confuse you. These are a separate thing in the case. Sheath collected, STR profile, they matched it to Kohberger's dad. They arrest him, they get the buccal swab, match it to the STR profile. It's like the IgG was a total separate thing. People get that confused. Now, that is what the state wants us to believe, but those are the facts that these people just can't seem to understand. Now, when we go through the policies, we're going to see that there was some mistakes made. And you can see the United States Department of Justice interim policy, forensic genetic genealogy, DNA analysis, and searching. This is pulled off of the defense's attachment to a motion to compel. So this isn't just pulled out of thin air. And you can see it says limitations. If the search of an FGG, which is forensic genetic genealogy, same thing as IgG, profile results in one or more genetic associations, the genetic genealogy service typically generates and provides the service user with a list of genetically associated service usernames along with an estimated relationship, and in some cases, the amount of DNA shared by those individuals. A genetic association means that the donor of the forensic or reference sample may be related to a service user. And when they talk about a reference sample is like the DNA collected from the trash. However, information derived from genetic associations is used by law enforcement only as an investigative lead. So that's what they mean when they talk about this IgG was simply a lead, okay? A suspect shall not be arrested based solely on a genetic association generated by genetic genealogy service. If a suspect is identified after a genetic association has occurred, STR DNA typing must be performed, and the suspect's STR DNA profile must be directly compared to the forensic profile previously uploaded to CODIS. This comparison is necessary to confirm that the forensic sample could have originated from the suspect. So, they got BCK's father's DNA. They got enough evidence from excluding that match to get an arrest warrant. And then when they got his buccal swab, they compared it to the original STR profile and got a match. That is the way that the law is written, or the policies are written by the DOJ, and that is what the state suggests that they followed. But the interim policy, when the circumstances surrounding the criminal acts present a substantial and ongoing threat to public safety or national security. So this is when they'll use IGG in a case, in an active case, is if there's an ongoing threat to public safety. But before an investigative agency may attempt to use forensic genetic genealogy services, the forensic profile derived from the candidate forensic sample must have been uploaded to CODIS. A subsequent CODIS search must have failed to produce probative and confirmed DNA matches. So, again, according to the state, everything that they did followed the DOJ guidelines. The only thing that didn't follow the guidelines exactly is the fact that they got Kohberger's father's DNA and matched it to the original STR profile. What they should have done was obtained Kohberger's DNA and matched it to the original STR profile, and then they would have followed the guidelines to a T according to them. That's the first thing you've got to understand in the case. Because if you don't understand even the facts that the state is presenting, then how can you possibly understand when we dive into those and point out the inconsistencies? So hopefully everybody is clear on the facts of the case. We're on the same page. Now we're going to dive in to the inconsistencies and what we believe really took place as it relates to this. And there's a lot of evidence that contributes to our determinations. When we look at further information from the DOJ policies, you'll see it lists investigative caution. Investigative agencies shall identify themselves as law enforcement to genetic genealogy services and enter and search forensic genealogy profiles only in those genealogical services that provide explicit notice to their service users and the public that law enforcement may use their service sites to investigate crimes or identify unidentified human remains. The investigated agency shall, if possible, configure service site user settings that control access to FGG profile data and associated account information in a manner that will prevent it from being viewed by other service users. So this is what they try to point to when they talk about a policy violation. The DOJ policy says they can only use genetic genealogy services that provide explicit notice to their service users and the public that law enforcement may use their service sites. Well, we know in this case that they've admitted to using genealogical services that they're not supposed to use, that don't provide explicit notice to their service users that law enforcement may use their service sites. They went into two, according to them, that they weren't supposed to. But other than this policy violation right here, which they apparently documented because the defense uncovered that they went into those two sites, all they had to do was document their work on the SNP and the SNP profile, their SNIP profile, and the family tree investigation, and they would have been completely compliant in the investigation because the DOJ guidelines strictly states that they have to document everything they do and hold it for the prosecutor to make it discoverable to the defense based on that state's discovery rules. They didn't do that. Destruction of all the work done by the FBI in this area demonstrates likely manipulation of evidence. So you have to ask this question. This is where I need you to think on another level. If the only thing that the FBI did wrong was go into two databases that they weren't supposed to based on the guidelines, then they should have kept all of their work on the family tree and the additional work they did on the S&P profile, turned that over, and then the only thing they would have done was gone into two databases and violated policy. If they kept the information that the defense could actually find out that they went into those two databases, why wouldn't they have kept the information on the family tree and all the other work that they did as it relates to the S&P profile? See, that tells you right there that They're keeping information, pointing to it and saying, here's where we messed up. But the things that they really don't want you to see, they won't let you see. That's how we know something's fishy in this thing. Now, when we go to this, we've got the state's facts over here. These are the facts that I believe truly happened in the case on the right over here. On November 13th, knife sheath collected. November 20th, a partial STR profile was uploaded into CODIS. It was a partial profile due to it being a degraded DNA sample, because touch DNA is often degraded, and we know it was on the button snap of the knife sheath. And it doesn't say it was on the button. Even if it was on the button could have porous spots where the coating would have allowed the copper ions to affect the DNA sample. But if it's on the bottom of the snap, on the inside, there is no coating. It's all straight brass. That'll degrade the DNA and prevent PCR amplification. All the evidence lends to this DNA was a partial sample due to degradation. And I'll give you more data on that here in just a minute. So they sent the sample to Othram Labs for IgG investigation. Othram did what they could with the sample and created a partial SNIP profile. And then they started a genetic genealogy investigation, and they couldn't get anywhere with it. That is all in the court record now. Then FBI removed the sample from Othram, and then everything goes dark once the FBI does that. But we've got to look at the other facts in this case that surround this time frame. At this same time frame, an informant leads the law enforcement to Kopaka. They unalive Kopaka, they get his digital device, they figure out that he is connected to Kohberger, and after that, they figure out Kohberger drives a white Hyundai Elantra. So they start the investigation into Kohberger. Because they had an original STR profile that was a partial sample, and they knew they weren't going to be able to match it to his full sample, and the FBI had taken the sample from Othram, well, now they go into databases that they weren't supposed to go into. We now know that Bryan Kohberger had uploaded his DNA, not his sister's. We know through public record and articles that Bryan Kohberger uploaded his DNA into GED Match. And in the court, when the judge asked Ann Taylor if she was certain that he had done that, she said, I don't have the GED Match file right now, Your Honor, which verifies that that was true. So the FBI goes into that database they're not supposed to go into to retrieve Kohberger's DNA information. And how do we know they did that? Because the SNIP profile that they got from Othram Labs, it didn't double in size at Othram Labs like these morons out there want to say. Othram Labs created an SNIP profile. The FBI then took it from Othram Labs, and the FBI in the dark somehow doubled the size of Othram Labs' SNIP profile. That's when it doubled in size. It didn't double in size from the Idaho State Lab to Othram. It doubled in size once the FBI got the sample from Othram. They doubled it in size. Othram is the leading, they're the leaders in their field on SNIP profiles. They would have created the most intricate SNIP profile available from the matter that was given to them. So the only way the FBI could have doubled that sample in size is if they had additional DNA information from somewhere. That's why they went into GED Match. They got the additional information and they added it to Othram's SNIP profile. Then, once they got Kohberger's buccal swab, the Idaho State Lab then used the information from the new SNP profile that was enhanced by the FBI, and they added it to the original STR profile that was a partial sample. It enhanced that sample, and then it was able to match it to BK's buccal swab and manipulate the statistical analysis on his DNA. That's how they matched his buccal swab to the original STR profile. And these morons out there that think they know something and then want to talk about stuff, they can't even get the basic facts. So I certainly don't expect them to understand what I'm saying right now. But let's take it a step further. I got a little heated there, sorry. This right here tells us everything we need to know as far as how they were able to manipulate this. All right, because when you take an S&P profile, which is the IgG form of the profile, it's much larger with much different information than an STR profile. But yes, an SNP DNA profile can indirectly affect the statistics of a match between STR profiles. So it affects the statistics, and that's what the defense says over and over in their filings. They're saying that the S&P profile affected the statistics of the match between the two STR profiles. And how does it do that? It does it particularly when dealing with closely related individuals, as the linkage disequilibrium between SNPs and STRs can provide additional information about the likelihood of a match, especially when analyzing degraded DNA samples where full STR profiles might not be available. See, everything that we look at in this goes back to the fact that that original STR profile was degraded DNA and it was not a complete sample. Key points to understand: SNPs and STRs located close to each other on the chromosome tend to be inherited together, creating a linkage disequilibrium. This means that knowing the SNP profile at a certain region can provide information about the possible STR alleles present at nearby loci. When DNA is degraded, it can be difficult to obtain complete STR profiles. In such cases, SNP analysis can be used to supplement the missing STR information, improving the accuracy of identifying a match. You see, with a degraded STR profile in the beginning, and then taking that information from that completed SNP profile that the FBI used Kohberger's own information to complete, they give that back to the Idaho State Police lab. They use the missing information from the STR, supplement it with the fabricated SNP profile from the FBI, and now they've completed their original STR profile that will absolutely match Kohberger's buccal swab. Now figure that one out. Understandable if using the Othram profile, but not the doubled in size hidden work of the FBI profile. No, because once they added Kohberger's information from GED match, double the size of that original SNP profile, then they would use it to affect the statistics of the two STR matches, like the defense says over and over and over in their filings. Now, for this to have happened, though, we have to lose a little bit of trust in the Idaho State Police lab. I know Special Agent Imel likes to talk really well about Rylene Nolan. I'm not going to talk so well about her, and I'm going to do it for a reason, and this reason I'm going to show you. Because also in the defense's attachments was this article from Forensic Science International, Synergy, and it's the National Technology Validation and Implementation of Collaborative Policies and Procedures for Forensic Investigative Genetic Genealogy. In 2022, the National Technology Validation and Implementation Collaborative was established. Now, I told you about this in a previous video as we went through the docs. When this article was established about this collaborative, it was focusing in on two people that we know real well. Policy and Procedure Committee members, Rylene Nolan, Idaho State Police Forensic Services, and Alana Minton, Office of the Attorney General, State of Idaho. So they set the policies, and guess who the very first state was to implement these policies. You got it. It was Idaho. But when you take a look at the founding members of this group who set all of this up, you'll see there are 13 different agencies that were involved in this article and this implementation of all these new cool FGG, IGG stuff. One of them is Idaho State Police Forensic Services. Matthew Gammett is the chair, but we know that Rylene Nolan is over that Idaho State Police Forensic Services lab. And who else is involved in this? Oh, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Forensic Services, Mr. Lance Allen. Well, what do we know about the Colorado Bureau of Investigative Forensic Services? And what do we know about Lance Allen? Has his name been in the news here recently? Not directly, but indirectly it sure has. You know, here's a filing on November 12, 2024 from the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, about Colorado. And you can see this letter is addressed to Director Chris Schaefer, Deputy Director of Forensic Services, Lance Allen. Wait a minute. That's the same Lance Allen we see right here that's involved in this policy and procedure implementation of the IGG and FGG for the states. Now, what else does this article addressed to Mr. Allen associate itself with? Oh, down here it's the misconduct of DNA analyst Yvonne Missy Woods. Oh, okay, so now we're starting to find a little bit of a trail here. We got Missy Woods to Lance Allen. We've got Lance Allen over here to Rylene Nolan and Alana Minton. Setting policy. Well, what is the deal with Missy Woods? Oh, that's right. She was just indicted and charged with 102 felonies for manipulating DNA results in Colorado. State Crime Lab debacle had earlier warnings of misconduct from Golden Child DNA scientists. Anomalies in cases go back 10 years, a Colorado Bureau of Investigation Internal Affairs report shows. So that's how y'all run your departments there, huh? Been doing it for a long time, have you?
Forensic scientist who worked on multiple high-profile cases like Kobe Bryant's sexual assault investigation could be forcing thousands of retrials. Colorado investigators say some of Yvonne Woods' DNA analysis over nearly 3 decades may have included altered data.
I don't remember the Hammer killer, but I'm certainly familiar with him now because there are some questions about whether the DNA evidence used to convict him is DNA evidence that had some missing, let's just say missing details or some faulty elements to it that could potentially lead to a retrial or the case being thrown out. Like, I don't know for sure how it's gonna play out. And to be sure, this is a developing story. It's been developing for several months now. But I do wanna give you the details about this DNA scandal in Colorado that will threaten to throw out possibly thousands of criminal convictions in the state. Now, the scandal revolves around a forensic scientist by the name of Yvonne Missy Woods. Now, she tested DNA evidence in Colorado's worst criminal cases for nearly 3 decades. And her work was also considered the gold standard by colleagues and put away literally thousands of violent criminals. But suddenly she resigned late last year, last November to be exact, and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation said that it had found what it referred to as anomalies in her work during an internal review. Now, the CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, is launching a criminal investigation into Woods. Now, the unfolding scandal is throwing Colorado's criminal justice system into chaos. The state said it would need to review and retest approximately 3,000 DNA samples that Woods handled. Public defenders estimate thousands of cases could be affected. Now, in November, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation notified prosecutors that DNA testing conducted by Woods in one specific case was in fact missing data. And I think this is what sparked the whole scandal, or at least knowledge of the scandal and what led to her sudden resignation in November. It had to do with a suspect by the name of Garrett Coughlin, who stands accused of killing 3 people. Now, his trial is set for April, and this likely spurred the investigation into Woods and the way that she conducts her work. In a December 5th email to district attorneys across the state, the lab director of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation said Woods had, in some cases, altered data and in others, analyzed samples several times, but reported only one result. So they thought that that was a problem. And so I'm gonna pause for a second and just give us some time to actually absorb how disastrous this could be. So they're thinking about retesting as many as 3,000 criminal convictions, meaning that if this is in fact the kind of scandal that it appears to be, there could be who knows how many people who were wrongfully convicted based on faulty DNA evidence. There are people who might have even not been convicted because of faulty DNA evidence. That we don't know, because they're gonna retest, people who fall under the 3,000 criminal convictions. But it would be disastrous if even a small percentage of those people were wrongfully convicted using faulty DNA testing that was conducted by Woods.
So when I hear Special Agent Emil Murphy the dog over there, spinning his yarns and praising Rylene Nolan, not after what I've located in the court docs that relates to their associations and their policies. No way. But just listening to that, I mean, if you're a guilter out there and your main piece of evidence is the DNA on the knife sheath, and then you take that and use that as gospel, and you ignore how law enforcement manipulated every other piece of evidence in the case, and you don't think they manipulated that one as well? If they manipulated every single other piece of evidence that they had against Bryan Kohberger, which we've now know, it's been proven in court, they manipulated every other single piece of evidence, including witness statements, doctoring of the cast data to show he wasn't nowhere near the house. I mean, he turned his phone off, and that's what criminals do in a crime, because the tower dump excluded him from being in the area. The car, oh yeah, we'd identified that car. Well, it turns out they didn't identify anything but clips of a car as a 2011 to 13, didn't even match his year model. Every piece of evidence they had against Bryan Kohberger, they manipulated it or maneuvered it to make it look like it was evidence. You don't think they would do the same thing with the DNA? Come on, you got to think for yourself. And if that's the only thing that you have linking him to the case and you believe he's guilty because of it, and you just watched what I just showed you, I don't know what to tell you, folks. But I can't stand when these morons talk about me all day long, start a channel just dogging me. But golly, educate yourself about what you're talking about if you're going to have intellectual discussions with the general public on this subject, if you really think you're trying to help in the case and not just trying to spread BS. Tonight, I am going to release another video, and all the information that I provided for you in this video was taken out of, there were excerpts from the Department of Justice policies as it relates to the IGG and that article that I just showed you. So what I'm going to do tonight in the video is I'm going to read all that for you. It was in an attachment by the defense to one of their motions to compel, and there's a lot of great information in there. Probably going to be boring hearing me read it all. That's why I'm preparing you in advance, but I am going to get it out for you tonight. In the meantime, please like and subscribe to the channel, post your comments, thoughts, criticisms, and until next time, Pavarotti's out.